Really, the court was kind of a unique vacuum of accountability and oversight within the federal government.
The justices, when they travel outside of Washington, sometimes get security from the U.S. Marshals Service. As a result of that, you can get some public records from the marshals.
Buried in page 16,000 or something, there was a mention of a private jet.
Our colleague from our research team found a Facebook page. This website had a post that said something like, "We were honored to receive a visit at New Haven Airport by Justice Thomas." The only plane that had taken that trip from DC to New Haven on that day was Harlan Crow's plane. Harlan Crow's a billionaire political donor.
Maybe it was the sort of thing that only you would do if you were in the habit of doing this. And that's really when we decided to try to figure out if this was a pattern. We made, I think, thousands of calls over the course of this reporting, conducted hundreds of interviews.
Really, the key to the reporting was talking to service workers who had little bits of what became the story.
We found out eventually that Clarence Thomas had virtually every year for over 2 decades been accepting luxury trips from Harlan Crow and not telling the public about it.
One of the vacations was a trip several years ago where Harlan Crow dispatched his private jet to pick up Justice Thomas, flew him across the world to Indonesia where Crow's super yacht was waiting for them.
For one trip that Thomas took to New Zealand, a yacht worker sent us a photo of Thomas's memoir.
And Justice Thomas had signed, "Thanks so much for all your work on our New Zealand vacation." After our first story was published, we got a rush of tips.
Harlan Crow had actually paid Thomas money in a real estate deal that Thomas didn't disclose to purchase Thomas's mom's house.
Harlan Crow had paid around $100,000 of private school tuition for Justice Thomas's relative who he was raising essentially as an adopted son.
Experts told us that all of this had to be public by federal law, but Thomas didn't disclose any of it.
We had multiple judges tell us that they would not let anyone even buy them lunch, let alone take them on a $1 million vacation or pay private school tuition for their child.
The underlying conduct itself is mind-boggling. The complete lack of transparency is something that is extremely disturbing.
It became very important to have documentary evidence. We got pictures, for example, of Justice Alito on this luxury Alaska fishing trip with a hedge fund billionaire who had cases at the Supreme Court.
We also started to try to get at other ethical questions, such as Clarence Thomas going secretly to the Koch political network, going to their events for high-dollar donors. And the Koch network brings major cases to the Supreme Court.
These stories really struck a chord in a way that most of the work I've done hasn't. The Supreme Court last year adopted a code of conduct for the first time in its history. They almost never even comment in response to stories, let alone actually take any kind of substantive action.
It was an extraordinary moment to see one of the most vaunted and also slow-moving institutions in America, frankly, do something it had never done before.
I think there's not a chance in the world that the Supreme Court would have adopted the ethics code if not for the courageous and tenacious reporting of ProPublica.
I think at a very basic level, investigative journalism is about uncovering secret information that's, important for the public to know.
You're always hoping when you write a story that it won't just go into the waste paper bin, that it will make the world a better place or make the government function better. Sometimes it does, and that's really the best part of the job, I think.